We're going live now. We are at the moment. So good morning, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to this Urban Design Talk, where we'll be taking a giant leap into the unknown with Dr. Samer Al-Sayary. As a space urbanist and multi-award-winning designer, Dr. Al-Sayary has dedicated his career to explore the infinite possibilities of space architecture and urbanism, as well as artificial intelligence. If you've ever looked up at the sky and wondered what it would be like to live on another planet, this webinar is for you. We'll be delving into the fascinating world of space urbanism and discovering the challenges and opportunities of designing cities for life beyond our planet. Dr. Al-Sayary Dr. Sayary's groundbreaking work has been exhibited in some of the most prestigious locations around the world, including the NASA Johnson Space Center in Houston and the United Nations Office for Outer Space Affairs. In this webinar, he'll be sharing his insights and experiences on designing sustainable cities in the space and the innovative approaches and technologies being used to make them a reality. But before we dive into our webinar, I would really like to take a moment to wish Ramadan Kareem to those observing. Today is the first day of Ramadan, and it is a very special time of the year for Muslims around the world, and we want to honor and recognize the importance of this occasion. Now, back to our webinar. Thanks, Dr. Al-Sayary, for accepting our invitation, and we are all ears to hear from you. The floor is yours.
Thank you so much for your efforts, and thank you for having me today. It's really an opportunity. I would prefer the word window or a portal between worlds, between continents, between cultures, to communicate, to share ideas, to share knowledge. So without further ado, let me share my screen and start. Yeah, I think we're good to go. Just please confirm to me.
Yes, perfect.
Okay, thank you so much. So really, it's very crucial to me to choose the name of each presentation. So the presentations today will be called The Tale of a Planet. It's a switch from extraterrestrial environments to the Earth environments. And how can we switch between both? How can we learn lessons to design on Earth in a better way and try to explore the possibilities outside the boundaries of our known realm, to start exploring new realms, maybe for our generation or the future generations. But what is a decentralized habitation system? It is the core of today's presentation. It is the idea of something new, and new notions, new ideas. Either it's suitably in an outer space or on Earth. It's a new notion to build something that is totally separated from any official grid, any electrical governmental grid. It's a housing system that can produce its energy, its own water, its own food, and it has its own social sustainability and economic viability. So this is what I call the decentralized habitation system. This is the line of research that I've started years ago. I'm still developing and working, and maybe soon I'll start publishing a couple of papers also about this new approach to housing. The idea all started with the extinction level event. We have to resist what is known as the extinction level event, or annihilation event, or mass annihilations, or existential risks, or even global catastrophes. Too many words that have just occurred years ago, and they all just lead to one destiny, the unavoidable. Actually, scientists have really studied a lot the extinction level events, and they just classified it into maybe 16 different events. That number has just grown up in the last year into 22 different cause or different event. Some of them are classified to be anthropogenic, and some of them is known as non-anthropogenic, which means man-made disasters or natural disasters. So there are too many risks to be taken. We have to start doing something about our future, the future of our generation, the sustainable human race, the sustainability of the human race, either it is on Earth or outside Earth. And there are so many theories regarding this approach. Some theories claim that it's the best of our race to build a moon base or a Mars base, just as a plan B for our race to continue after the disaster and maybe return back to Earth and bounce and start or reverse the civilization and start a new civilization. Others might assume that the outposts will be just temporary for us, and it's just a matter of time before we just bounce back. And the third party, and maybe I would like to work in the favor of those party, which claim that even the Earth, you can design for extraterrestrial environment, which are classified as extreme environment, but any kind of those extinction level event will turn our Earth into an extreme environment. So if we do have the technology, science, and knowledge and will to build outside Earth in an extreme environment, for sure we are capable of doing the same on our Earth. So also we have essential thinking techniques for architects. This is the gift that I can offer not only for architects but for the public. Those are the main the mental exercising techniques that I would like to advise all of our attendees today to start training on them, start practicing them. 27 different thinking technique, which will make you a total different person. These, in my humble opinion, are the main basic techniques, thinking techniques, which define a space architect and a practicing space architect. So you have to borrow ideas, for example, from other domains, which is defined as the horizontal thinking and lateral thinking. You have to go deep inside something and to conduct a very deep research in something that you like to get. This is not only for scientists or engineers, but even if you would like to buy something like a new mobile phone and a smartphone, for example, you have to practice the 6 thinking heads. Design thinking, which today is applied in every different domain. Visual note taking, you have to have your own pocket notebook just to take notes, not in the textual language, but also in the visual language, and so on. So let's just represent the extreme hazards that we have to face. What are the challenges? I would prefer the word challenges because challenges imply that these are just hazards that could be overcome. We can just solve those ideas. Number one, the vacuum, the cosmic radiation, and specifically the gamma rays and the solar flares, which is also defined as the solar events. The extreme temperature, the space debris, either it is a natural space debris or man-made space debris. The micrometeoroids, which is also a natural phenomena. The harsh terrain on planetary surfaces, the vast distances between planets, lack of resources, there is no infrastructure. Also, the Regulus, and the Regulus is a very toxic and very hazardous material to our health. The micro or low gravity, which causes the mass of our muscle and our bone to shrink and decrease, and of course, the phobia of the tight spaces. Those are some of the space challenges that each and every designer working in space have to study and try to overcome and try to develop a reverse action toward it. We have also physiological challenges. Our body changes. So we lose a lot of our bone mass. We lose our muscle. Our muscle is weakening in the 0G or zero gravity or microgravity. Our cardiovascular system is weakening, and that might cause a problem when you decide to bounce back to Earth. It cannot overcome the great gravity of Earth. Also, we might experience visual blurring, deterioration, and of course, in any kind of decreased gravity, we have sensory and motor issues and function. But also do not forget the psychological changes, and they are beyond the physiological one. We can suffer all kinds of depression, anxiety, unfulfilled cravings, homesickness, depression, sleeping disorders, cognitive sensory defects, confusion, distractions. But just for a joke, it's not actually a real joke. It might be a fact. Aren't we all experiencing those same effects even with our modern day lifestyle and the bombarding of notifications and everything around us? So yes, these are some of the challenges that we might experience in the extraterrestrial environment, but also designing on Earth in a better way, we might really decrease the suffer resulting from today's lifestyle. What is the manifesto that I'll be displaying, I will be presenting today of my work? I work in alignment with nature. I do depend on nature-based solution. I am a big fan of biomimicry and biophilic design and biomorphic lines. So The father of modern architecture has a very good quote to summarize everything. He said, it is always life that is right and the architect who is wrong. At that time, architects try to work against nature until we realized the very important lesson that it is not very wise or very smart to work against nature. We have to work in alignment with nature, and successively the generations that had to come yet will reconsider not working with nature, but working as nature, working and behaving as nature, and maybe someday we can make a connection with other species like ants and birds and try to communicate with them and learn from them how can they work from nature and for nature and in alignment with the surrounding natural context. So the first thing, it will be a really vertical, deep research, profound research in the old knowledge and science accumulated through thousands of years ago to capture hidden values and intangible strengths for our human legacy. I I come from the Middle East. I do work daily on the same streets that people used to walk on for the last 5,000 years. We have a huge legacy of knowledge and experience in building with a very low tech and passive solutions that are not costly at all, but at the same time, it is yet so effective. That is what we really need in designing in a harsh environment like space. But at the same time, that old knowledge have to be rethought, had to be redeveloped, rediscovered even. So developing those values and strengths using the cutting edge technologies, name it, artificial intelligence, parametric design, generative design, whatever I can use, environmental simulation. So testing those values and redeveloping the theories to cope with the new technology, it will result in a new product that had just developed thousands of years ago, and it's a very deep legacy. But also, the third part and the last part is documenting and publishing my experiments to deliver them to the future generations. Working in space is a very huge endeavor. We can just live for our entire life designing for something that might occur 300 years after our passing away. So, this endeavor is a responsibility. We have to pass to our future generations what our findings so they can develop and they can take the lead and they can start building what we have start designing. So, space settlements. And here we would like to discuss, is it a settlement or is it a colony? According to anthropologists, there are four phases of colonization. The first phase, when just the people stick a flag, find a new world, and they claim that this is our new finding, and they are tied and connected to their motherland. The second generation of colonization, when new temporary immigrants start to exploring the new land, start exploring its resources, and start settling down. And the third phase of colonization, which might shift a little bit from the word colonization to the word settlements, which consider the new place as the new home to settle down. They are not so much connected as the previous generation to the motherland. And the last, of course, and the fourth generation of colonization, it's the newborn generations that consider their new home as the only home, and they usually declare independence. And the fourth phase of colonization are usually throughout the mankind of human history are associated with military conflicts to declare independences. So the word oasis, the first inspiration was the first kind of settlement the human had to develop. The first kind of settlements are always associated with the existence of water and energy. Water means a very developed flora and fauna life forms in a very hazard and extreme place like desert. So the water is not only the source of drinking, but it is the source of drinking and food and all kind of life. So it is the source of life. At 2010, I do remember at my early beginnings working in the space architecture when NASA declared that the main two elements that should be secured in order to secure our life on any planet are water and energy. So energy could be imported. We can manufacture our own reactors here, even on Earth, and start shipping those and transporting those reactors to the new land. But the main problem is the existence of water until the new findings of NASA had just declared that there are tons of frozen water beneath the lunar and the Martian regolith. And with that finding, the possibility of life on the extraterrestrial environment has just popped up. And that means that we can live and start building our own colonies. on the extraterrestrial environment. So, first, the project that I'd like to discuss is the Oasis, the Lunar Oasis project. It is a third phase colonization, which means that they are temporary immigrants that will be just moving from their mother and Earth to the new place, starting to explore its own resources. And the main economic drive for that is the helium-3. It's a very abundant resource on Moon, and it is essential for the reactors. And it might be a safe haven for those who would like to escape any kind of existential risks that might occur on Earth. So that will be the lunar oasis. The forming forces and the driving forces of that is the circle. The circle throughout our entire human history is always associated with the community, the family, the circle of friends. Even we use it in our own words when you use the circle of friends, circle of trust, circling an announcement, which means just keep it in your own circle, social circle. So the circle, even the folkloric dances, and even the tribe members who gathered around the fire in primitive tribes, they all use the formation according to the circle. But also we have a typical human behavior, which is known as the anthropization. Anthropization is the human intervention in nature to try to control nature in our favor, like, for example, terracing the mountains to start building farms on those mountains. And the anthropization just popped out and inspired me with the contouring effect. The contouring, it's a parametric design technique. So we have anthropization, and that specific image had just inspired me with using the same technique used in computer and parametric design as the contouring, and start to combine both of those elements together to form a lunar oasis. But also one of my researches and the biomimicking is the one of the most sophisticated kind of colonization on Earth. Of course, not a human habitat, it's an ant habitat and termites habitat. They succeeded in building one of the sophisticated engineering colonies which can resist all kind of existential risks according to those little fellas. So this kind of colonization can resist floods, drafts, extreme temperatures, name it, whatever, even earthquakes. The undulating concentric circles that you can see with the main central shaft is a very remarkable element. And with going further, deeper more in the study of this colonization and combining all of those factors, and here we go, the Project Lunar Oasis. Of course, I'm a space architect, but I am not a space scientist. So I have also to depend on previous studies done by NASA scientists. And here I really had to take my time in reading a lot of papers and books to understand the main basic spaces. And I'm so fond of the papers written by Dr. Marco Cohen, one of the NASA chief architects. I have to credit this guy. He is very insightful. I have learned a lot of him in designing the spaces and the architecture of lunar outposts. But of course, I do define myself also as a scientist. So I'm not only a scientist or an architect, I'm an architect who takes science and turn it into physical form in architecture, and then return this physical form into papers and start to publish those papers again to the scientific community. So it's from science to architecture, and again from architecture to science. This is what I do. Depending on sites also, not only the resources available from NASA, but I have found a very nice research done by Purdue University, and this is a depiction and anticipation of the lunar lava caves. Lunar lava caves will be a natural shield against most of the hazards that I've been presenting. Name it, whatever you can imagine. The cosmic gamma rays, the debris, space debris and micrometeoroids, the extreme temperatures, the solar exposure, all of those fatal factors, we are just shielded in a natural shield, which is called the cave, the lunar cave. And surprisingly, one of the known settlements and homes of and shelter to the human being are also the caves on Earth. So it's not a coincidence. The same human being that lived thousands of years ago, he is the same human being with the same basic needs, according to Maslow, pyramid of needs, that will be residing the new planet. So why not to build our colony inside the same cave? And from here we go. This is a specific cave, and this is the 3D scanning image of the same cave that I try to build up in 3D software and start building my own colony inside it. As a descendant from Middle East, of course, we have all kind of wall murals, a very typical art practice that practiced in all ancient civilizations, starting from the old Egyptians, ancient Greeks, Romans, even the Islamic era. They all always tended to document their daily life on the wall murals, and that was the way we have learned about their lifestyle and their history. So the four phases of colonization could be shown, and they are depicted on this wall mural that I have been bumping into this petroglyphs of the internal water mural. First phase is starting in 1969 with the Apollo Mission 11 with Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin, and then 2022 when they started, the private sector started and announced that they will be partnering with the space agencies to start the space exploration and colonization. And according to my basic calculation, I think at 2030, with the end of Artemis program, that could witness the first colony, and hopefully at 2050, the first child will be born on Moon. This is a transversal section in the lunar oasis. You can see the main source of power, which will be the kilowatt power. At that time, I thought that it will be the fusion reactor, according to the abundance of helium-3 on the lunar surface, and a mobile fabricated fusion reactor on Earth that could be transported and shipped in alignment with the payload dimensions of the SLS rockets. So it could be dug out inside the frozen water, and the frozen water will act as a natural shield for, God forbids, if anything or any nuclear failure or leak that might occur, that frozen water will be the natural shield to protect the whole colony. At the same time, that frozen water needed to be melted, purified. So we have like 12 different plant I mean like factor of purification and cleaning the water from the regolith and separating all heavy chemicals and heavy metals, and building a farm hydroponic system with a pneumatic structure. And we have two safe houses according to NASA 1997 classification. This is called the Class 1 architecture. Class 1 architecture is defined as a pre-integrated, prefabricated, and totally tested on Earth, and then transported and shipped as it is to the new surface. So those small capsules will be a safe box for the residents of that colony, for, God forbids, any leakage that might occur or any kind of catastrophe that might occur. That will be their own safe capsule, just for a temporary time until they can recover and repair the failure that might occur. Turning to another principle, which is known as the ISRU, and let me here elaborate this notion a little bit. ISRU is known as the in situ resource utilization. In a very simple words, it is just built from the surrounding material. If you are building in the North Pole, use the ice and start building your igloo habitats. If you are building in North America, North Canada, North Europe, start using the timber construction, because due to the availability of the timber in that environment and context, if you are building in Middle East desert communities, use the sand to start solidifying your own desert habitats. If you are building by the Nile, for example, use the mud. If you are building on a mountain, use the stone. And surprisingly, after 2010, NASA had declared that the most feasible in technical feasibility and financial feasibility way of constructing the new colonies and habitats on an extraterrestrial environment is using the local regolith. If you are building on Moon, use the lunar regolith. If you are building on Mars, use the Martian regolith, and start using maybe with a 3D printing technology, you can build the third class of architecture. The third class of architecture, according to NASA 1997 classification, is using the local resources in building. And here, let me just point out something important. The ancient communities and the thousands of years ago, they used the same technique. At that time, there was no technology to support the high-rise constructions. So the only feasible technical feasibility and financial feasibility way at that time was to use the local resources. And according to the architecture theory and sustainable design, even in our modern time days, it is the most also feasible way to build in alignment with the context is to use what is available in your environment. At that moment, I try to find new ways of method, not to use a solid brick. The solid brick, it might be a very effective shield against natural hazards on the lunar surface, like cosmic radiation and thermal swings. But at the same time, it's so much consuming using a 3D robotic arm to build using the laser sintering technique or try to build a complete block. So I found a very interesting research done by the MIT, which also claimed that the minimal surface and definitely the gyroid cube, that cube on the left, is 6 more times effective in terms of bearing loads than a solid cube, which under exerting an effort loads upon it, it might have internal cracks inside it. So the gyroid cube is effective in terms of load bearing system, but also it contains air pockets or vacuum pockets, which might act as a natural shield against the thermal fluctuations and the extreme thermal temperatures outside. And it's a modular system, which means that it could be duplicated and arrayed both horizontally and vertically. So it is a very effective method. And I start prototyping and experimenting using parametric design. The U number of waves and the V number of waves, U and V in parametric design, implies two coordinate systems like the X and Y, but it is not a Cartesian system. The U is curvy lines and the V at the same time. So I start prototyping the appropriate number of U and V till I reached the ideal cube. I started forming circular formations to build circular walls and cylindrical formations. And then at that time, of course, I didn't have the main prototypes that NASA had developed during the last years, but I tried to make two prototypes according to the ABB robotic arm system, combining it with a vehicle rover. One I call the excavator, and the other one will be the 3D printing arm. And I needed to calculate the path needed and to define the path needed for those little fellows to start working on. So, moving to the powering system, I do believe it is crucial and important to diversify between powering solution. It is not very wise to rely on just one source of power system. So, in addition to the main reactor that I have discussed earlier, also, I do believe that it is very effective to use the solar-based satellite system, which will be a set of satellites that will be deployed at the geosynchronous lunar orbit and start collecting all solar arrays and beaming electrical energy in low microwaves to the Earth, to the lunar antennas. And the lunar antennas will be receiving those microwaves, turning them into electrical power to be stored and to be used. Also, all kind of engineering could be studied, but the most important part to be engineered is the fun, the human part, the humane. We are working for the prosperity of the human being. So let's do not forget fun. Why not to deploy a piezoelectric flooring on the inside interiors of those colonies so people can just start walking, jogging, even dancing or exercising. And at the same time, they are having fun to increase the power of the colony and increase the power storage with their physical activity exerted on that floors. The piezoelectric floor is no as science fiction. It is commercially sold in various places all around the world. Finally, the hygiene and the psychological well-being. It is very, very devastating to stay in your room for long duration. Let's do not forget what we have all experienced during the COVID-19 when we had to stay at our homes, and our homes is not a very small room, but we have to stay for like weeks. So you can imagine that the astronauts will have to stay in their tight rooms for 6 months, more or less. So that will be very depressing. That will be very devastating to any mental health of the astronauts and the crew members. So The idea popped up in my mind. There is no atmosphere on moon, which means there is no wind dynamics, which means that there is no transfer of the regolith from one place to another place due to the lack of air and wind. So why not to build a complete courtyard and to be vacuum cleaned so they can stretch their legs, they can experience the new park on a frozen lake with a hydroponic park uh, for trees, so they can see the trees and the water in a safe and clean heaven, insidely vacuumly cleaned. So that might please them a little bit. They might have their own fun at the same time and eliminate any claustrophobic effect. At the same time, they will be experiencing the interior wall murals and the story of our race on moon, which will be they will be the main actors of that story. That project was developed in 2018. The first award was from Jacques Rougerie Foundation, and then later on from Space Art VR Ukraine, which won its way up to be turned into a VR virtual reality experience, and later on in Vienna, Austria, in the United Nations Office for Outer Space Affairs. And by the way, if you have just Googled the Lunar Oasis or Dr. Samir Sayary and UNOSA, United Nations Office of Outer Space Affairs, the same PDF is still on their website for download, so you can go and access and download the project in one scientific poster. It's free for all. You can just keep it on your laptop or read it or whatever you can do. Later on, I was approached by one of the Gulf country governments, and they were so interested in the project of the Lunar Oasis, and they start asking me to develop an Earth version to be built in the Dubai's Sahara Desert. And I was so much interested in building another prototype, building on Earth. It's like heaven in comparison to the lunar environment. So it's so much easier, but I have to take into consideration that now I have wind, I have air dynamics. So that means that this inner courtyard will not be the safe, clean heaven, but there is no need because also there is oxygen. So it's a little bit different, but testing some of the parts, let's deal with the new colony as a lunar mission, analog mission, to start training astronauts, start testing the psychological experiencing in small space, start testing our own engineering systems so it could work out. And at the same time, they noted out that it should be a touristic attraction to start building our first colony on Dubai's desert so tourists can meet. So I said, fun is okay, but why not also to develop it and start building the new colony, which might be a tourist attraction and might be a lunar analog mission, but also it might act as the main control mission center. So that would be the main prototype. And later on, we can build another twin on Moon, and another third twin on Mars, and another fourth twin at the virtual metaverse colony. And to link all of those four colonies together, the Earth version, the lunar version, the Mars version, and the virtual version. And they will act as the one complete system, all connected together. These are just some images from the Earth version. And this is the idea of having a virtual metaverse version of those colonies so people can meet. Even if an astronaut would like to meet his parents that cannot really travel into space, but you would like to meet at the same time and space. So that might work in their favor to have a virtual copy and to build a metaverse copy of that virtual environment and starting. They are the same spaces, they will use the same corridors and the same lighting system, the same parameters, so they can experience the same experience, so they can meet and gather with their friends, so that all of the Earth cravings that the astronauts or the crew members might suffer will be also eliminated. In 2019, I started developing the third version after the second version of Earth, which is known as the Martian Oasis. And luckily, it has also won in Kuala Lumpur Architectural International Festival in 2019. It might look like the Lunar Oasis, but the environmental parameters are totally different. The gravity on Moon is only 16% of the gravity of Earth. On the other hand, the Martian gravity is 38% of the Earth gravity. Mars had atmosphere, which means that there is wind. That means that there is the Regulus will travel from one place to another place. They also have something called the devil storms, which are very huge storms circulating all of the Martian planet surface and might block the sun exposure for a while. So here I decided not to build inside a Martian lava cave and start to use the outer surface and started by the main gates which were oriented according to the cardinal directions of the Mars planet. The Martian north, south, east, and west, they will act as the navigational clues for all future missions that would like to land on the Martian surface. These are the two versions. The one on the right is the Martian Oasis, and the one on the the right is the Martian Oasis, sorry, the left is the Lunar Oasis. It's a long process, of course. I just skipped all of the technical parts and the timeline from boring, then 3D. I started with 3D printing until I realized that the water is a very precious commodity on two planets, the Moon and Mars. So I switched it from the 3D printing to the laser sintering. Laser sintering is fusing with a very high power laser beam the Regulus particles together until I realized that there are much more effective way, which is called the laser melting. So three different levels started from the 3D printing, then laser sintering, and finally to the laser melting. All of those are scientific papers that I had to read in order to understand and start building something in accordance. So this is also a transversal section in just one half of the colony. You can find that our phases, we also have our own reactor and a very long air lock system with air showering to decontaminate all the crew members for any possible regolith until they go to the food production unit underground, and the hydroponic system will be upground, and you can see those long fins which will vibrate and escalate according to the wind. So with this vibration, they might generate electricity using also the piezoelectric technique, a very low cost technique and very effective yet. And then the administrative work, and finally the living quarters, and with another airlock system. And at that time, I decided just to have like 50% of the living spaces, living quarters beneath earth, and 50% will be above earth to enable building transparent windows to enable the sunlight and the daylight to enter the interior spaces. So the circadian rhythm of the human being and human body could be also maintained. The four phases would be selecting the pit crater that has a high possibility of frozen water beneath, adding our main cardinal directions, clues, and then start deploying the powering system. And then the boring technique will start until finally the 3D printing or the laser sintering. And after phase 4, the colony will be ready to receive its first crew human members. So before the phase 4, it's all automated phases using the robotic arms, administered and monitored using a hybrid system between an AI system and Earth-controlled system. And that was the story of the Oasis project with all of its variations and alternatives and different versions. One particular element, which was the hydroponic system that I have presented today, which was an independent project at one and won its own prize in 2017 in Mars City Design, Los Angeles, the first prize of Mars colonization in the energy category. So these are the inflatable double-sided hydroponic system with an aerogel layer to shield the plants from radiation and at the same time enable the sunlight and the daylight to start helping the plants in the photosynthesis process. The aerogel is a very light material, and at the same time, it is so effective, and it could be injected in the double-sided inflatable unit. That was due to the main issue, the main problem on the Mars planet, that some specific months of the year that might rise up to 6 complete months, the total surface of Mars might be blocked with dust, according to the last readings in papers of the Mars environmental parameters. So those dust might prevent and deprive all of the plant from receiving the essential sunlight. And from here, I start. So why not turning that issue and that problem to work in our favor? The same dust that will be carried by wind, the same wind could be also oscillating those fins. So those fins could produce energy, which might be essential to light up the total trees and plants, and um, to start working and providing the plant with all of its need of light to for the photosynthesis process. So what was yesterday a problem might be today's opportunity. That is another depiction of the same colony after the dust sandstorm. And that was the early prototypes of Tree of Life. It was very bulky, very unpractical, and it lacked the dimensions of the payload of SLS project. It is the standard rocket size that I work upon, the interior dimensions of the payload SLS rockets. So that first prototype, when I just made my trip and journey to the United States in 2017, I was taking a very good workshop with the senior engineers from NASA and the ex-NASA engineers, and they really taught me a lot. And later on, I start, after developing that prototype and reading a lot, and one of the most important books that really had a paradigm shift in my thinking way is The Hidden Life of Trees, until I realized that trees are social community. Trees communicate with each other. They have feelings. They feel joy, happiness, sadness, even depression. They share their own food and nutrition system, and each tree start to share its own nutrition system to its children seeds. And after the children seeds, they start spreading to their neighbors. So these are all community. And that inspired me to start connecting each tree also to share the resources. And the resources on Mars might be the oxygen and the CO2, the carbon dioxide, and even the electrical power and the nutrients. So why not to mimic nature, even in the extraterrestrial environment, to start building our own synthetic nature? So that made me think, why not to work only as a sustainable design, but to act as nature? So humans will be the new nature builders. We will build our own ecosystem. Later on, I start decreasing the size and making smaller sized capsules with the deployable MSA, which is the abbreviation of the memory shaped alloys. And I found my answers in another engineered piece by NASA, which is the wheels of the rovers of Moon. They are built with the MSA, or the memory shaped alloys, specifically a metal called nitinol. So the nitinol was a very important piece of information that I utilized on those fins, something that will be light, effective, resilient. So it could be oscillating and could resist all kind of damage, from the deployment damages to the extreme weather damages, because they can retrieve its own and regain its own shape again, because they carry the memory of the original shape that they've been deployed with. And the pointed geometry, just to dust, to brush off and dust off all kind of dust, and those contours that you can find on the surface, will be the new LED wiring system that will be providing the plants with its own photosynthesis needs. And this is an inflatable part for all of the nutrients that could be important for that tree to grow. So this is a closed loop circular economy system. Something also learned from nature. Those are the first prototype that I had to 3D print and try to test against their own thermal behavior, and the geometry that will be brushing and dusting off its regolith, and so and so. That is another photo during my 2017 workshop in Mojave Desert, the place that we would like to make our prototypes in, build our prototypes on. And from bouncing from one project to another project, this is another awarded project also for the Arab Emirates. It is in alignment for the plans of 2021, 2117, sorry, colony. They have announced that they will be building their first colony on Mars in 2117, just 100 years from my visit to Los Angeles. So this is an endeavor. I do believe that I will not be living for the 100 years to see my creations on Mars, but I do believe, and I'm so sure and confident, that there might be generations that will be taking my work and completing what I have started and making my dream come true, just as Jules Verne start writing about the submarine 160 years before the invention of the submarine, that inspired me to also work to deliver to the new generations my legacy so they can complete what I have started. Another awarded project in 2020 is the Lunar Space Elevator. The elevator will be acting as the new railroad system that would be the catalyst for the fifth industrial revolution, the connector between the planets, the heavy resources and the goods, and the main railroad, just like the 19th century and 18th century railroad that had triggered the second industrial revolution. That will be also for our fifth industrial revolution. It will be the catalyst of the space economy. It is an internal and external transportation system. So it will be contain multi-stations that will be connecting and throwing the goods to in the orbits of the other missions. So there is a station for Mars, for Earth, even there's a tourism supplies station, and there is a deep space telescope at the end of that elevator. But at the same time, for structural consolidation, it will be connected to various places on Moon, which might also work as a structural consolidation, but at the same time, it will be connecting various geographical locations on Moon by one central location, which is the tourism supplies station. So you can go forth and coming through that circulation system. Of course, it is a biomimicry of the same human eye. So that project, which is called the IRIS project, and the fun part here is the word iris. Iris, it is an anatomy of our eye. It is the muscle that is contracting and opening and closing our eye, and that will work with the same way with the end telescope. And the logo of this project, or the slogan of this project, that we will put an eye on sky. But at the same time, if you have digged into the historical reference of the word iris, iris in the ancient Greek mythologies, it is the messenger of gods. So that was the messenger god that carried different messages from one place to another place, and that is the same function of the lunar space elevator, the IRIS project. It'll be connecting different planets all together and putting our eye on the sky. So the iris, with the word that has a multidimensional meanings, and at the same time, it could reflect many endeavors to our race. The interior of the lunar, under the terrain, there is a complete station that will be importing part of our Mother Earth and building our own equilibrium and balanced ecosystem. It will contain all flora and fauna, and at the same time, it will be a depiction of our natural landscape and scenes. Yet it is a synthetic nature, but it is in alignment with the natural nature. So it is a place where the astronauts or the crew members will not just count the moments or count the days to return to their Mother Earth, but they will so much appreciate that place that they'll be enjoying each moment and start building memories, and even building what is known in the architectural domain as the place attachment. So they will be attached to their place, and that is the foundation of building a new home and not just a colony. These are all different various parts of the same place. This is the above the ground or the supersurface place. This is the station that will be capping the selected Mars Tranquillus pit crater. So this is a real geographical location, and the main idea is just to cap that pit crater and start making your own heaven shielded underground in that cave, and the industrial station and all of the work will be above the surface, and the transportation will be starting from underground to the geosynchronous orbit of Moon. Another particular project that honorably mentioned is the Key of Life. That will be our gas station, petrol stations. It will be providing power to all of the missions starting from Earth to Moon. So that is the path, that is the new space Silk Road. So those gas stations will be deployed at specific equilibrium parts known as the G part, G1, G2, G3, G4. It's a very stable locations in space between the orbit dynamics, and it is the place where the equilibrium occurs between the gravitational orb, the gravity of the different orbits. So they will be suspended just for serving all missions. They will be gathering all the solar exposure and turning it into electricity and beaming it back to the space vehicles using the low microwaves beams. Also, it is a depiction of our legacy, the human part in all and each kind of civilization, and even primitive tribes and primitive communities. You can find the winged sun. So the winged sun, it is the same idea that I have to depict from old Mayans in South America to old Egyptians, ancient Egyptians, to the Vikings, to whatever human culture, you will find the same concept exists. So it is something that is not specific to a specific nation. It is something that reflects and expresses the human legacy. This is another developed version of the key of life that will be acting as the main infrastructure on Mars planet, also to start collecting all kind of solar exposure and turning it into electrical power so they can start providing the colony with its needs with energy. Until 2023, this is the most recent project when I found out the AI and the power of using AI. And I start using the ChatGPT in developing space projects. And these are some advices with my short chat with the ChatGPT when I started a project, another Martian project called the Martian Coral Reefs. And the coral reefs, it's a very sustainable and very durable and perpetual kind of colonization. It carries all kind of life forms inside it, and yet at the same time, it can resist all kind of existential risks, according to marine life specialists and biologists. So it is a very durable and sustainable. And I started limiting and narrowing down my research into a specific kind of coral reef called the brain coral reef. I was so much interested in the brain coral reef that I try to rationalize nature. I try to reproduce nature. Nature might look as it is random, but it is never chaotic. So randomness means, but yes, random but not chaotic. That means that there's some kind of a code or a system in the repetition of those units. And again, after asking ChatGPT, OpenAI, what is the specific way that I can make nature or reproduce nature? And I found my answer in a science called the shape grammar. Why don't you just set some rules for scaling and proportioning and orientation and try to understand the branching system, the interconnection and the repetition of the elements? And from that point, I started building my own vocabulary. So that visual vocabulary, those visual alphabetics, it's the same alphabetics of the brain coral reef. So I have like one unit or half unit. The repetition system might be a displacement or rotational or inversion and rotational until I reach the complexity of the shape that will be a reproduction of nature, but under an engineered system, which could be machined and could be reconstructed using our own today's technology. And that is the important part. So rationalizing nature is the approach for the new project. And again, I try to use the text image generators like DALI 2 when I start to understand how the even various Voronoi pattern is a pattern created by nature and for nature. So try to understand the solid and void relationship. And I start building my own colony using all of the AI inspiration and advices from different platforms, AI platforms. And from that, I start also experimenting and understanding what could be the possible interior space. After all, we are building for human beings. And those are all images also generated using DALI 2 until I try to mimic and make 3 levels of spaces. An open space, semi-open, semi-closed space, which will be ideal for the parking of our rovers, and totally shielded space for our crew members. And of course, there is a complete farm beneath that structure in a beneath lunar lava cave. That is a cross section in one of the units, and you can find here the pressurized units that will be inside and shielded using also the laser sintering and the 3D printing method, you will find all kind of rods for communication, and at the same time will be oscillating by the wind to start to generate more energy. It is the new relic that will be our new, like the old Egyptian and Greek temples, that will be our new temples. That will be the relics that maybe after thousands of years to come, it will be considered the new legacy of the Martian culture. And understanding the internal connection of those pressurized units, I found my answer in depicting and using the artificial intelligence and training the AI system in having an infinite combinations of air conditioning ducts, a very similar kind of pressurized units that would work in my favor. And all of those are also images generated using another application called Dawn AI, until I reached answers. And by the way, those are very limited images. I have literally hundreds of images in the span of 3 months to start generating. And from here, I try to develop a connection system to create a very long and infinite looping system of all of those terms. So this will be a colony. It might mimic a little bit or evoke a little bit the feeling of the ant colonies, but it is inspired from the coral reefs and it is built for humans. So bottom answer here is, it is something that is created from nature for a natural lifestyle in harsh environments, something that humans would act as nature builders. Those are this is a prototype of excavator developed by NASA. The one on the left, it is the 3D builder that I have to develop after understanding the radius and the diameter needed to start inserting those rovers in between the voids of the system to start building, and later on also will be kept for maintenance. Just in any kind of failure that might occur, it might help in rebuilding the collapsed parts. And switching to the farming system, which is a developed version of Tree of Life with much more density at the past one, using the pit craters and start deploying the farming units and the underground surface, which will be the human part, and the trees, which might use the solar exposure for its photosynthesis, and it is shaded at the same time, and developing a pop-up mobile hydroponic system that could be shipped easily, fitting in the payload of the SLS rocket dimensions. This is the main general layout, starting from the SLS rockets parking way, and the rover will be taking the astronauts to its colony. The powering system also developed by NASA recently, which is called the Kilo Power Unit, and the piezoelectric. So trying to build a whole community. And the part that I didn't have time to explain today, by the way, is the social and governmental part. Would it be a democratic system or a technocrat system or a genocrat system or a hybrid between all of those, with the oligarchies on earth to support the financial resources for the building and for the maintenance of and sustaining of that life? So I start also understanding the political system. At December 2020, I was lucky enough to go to Paris and take my award. And at that specific date, I was assigned to be a juror for the next, and act as a judge member for the next years to come, to start judging and start choosing the winners in the space architecture category. So turning from a competitor or a challenger into a jury and judge member, that was an honor in the Institut de France, one of the most prestigious institutes in Paris and in France in general. So my quote is, we have to develop and learn space technology. We will need it someday on Earth. Just a couple of minutes and I'll wrap up things. Turning from space to Earth, those are all experiments that each and every one of them was awarded differently in a country or specific continent. They are decentralized, zero energy, producing its own food and water, and it's a workforce it's a place for work. Simplicity might be the ultimate sophistication, but in order to achieve this simplicity, you have to go a very deep research and very deep, complicated engineering system. That is the same idea of the iHouse, for example, which in order to build this minimalistic form, I have to make 10 years researches with the 50 different criteria that is inserted in that simple form. Building for the extreme poverty on Earth, which is considered as an extreme environment, and trying to give them solutions, just sliding quickly, sustainable solution taking from space technology and space science and trying to build something for food production, for passive solution, very extremely low cost solution, and celebrating and having fun, part of our human part. Celebrations, festivals, fun is important just as food. Having the various flexibility to work in appropriateness to the different urban scenarios. Scientific thinking, even after this project has been awarded, I completed my studies to turn it into a paper. So I had to undergo all of the environmental simulations and various and different projects. It is a complete line of projects, and not just one project. It's a 25 years of my life. So that is the journey. That is the map of the cities that I've been awarded in the last 25 years. And I have been through a very exciting life. Thank God for that. And I appreciate it. That is the map of the exhibitions. And might be the next month is the National Museum of Germany, and in Italy, the Binali of architecture in Venice were also requested to exhibit some of my projects. So I am lucky enough that I'll be contributing to those country. I'll be adding 2 more orange dots. That is the 2019 exhibition in NASA Johnson Space Center, the Lunar Oasis and the Tree of Life project. And that is another virtual exhibition of my work in UK. The coincidence here, and of course there's nothing coincident, the same journal, the same magazine that had carried Stephen Hawking, the first scientist to call upon going to space for resisting his existential risk, is the same issue that had written about my project in its pages. So different platforms and different places, from starting from NASA Johnson Space Center, Architecture d'Aujourd'hui, Forbes magazine, Hassan Fathi's award, one of the prestigious awards in Middle East, Larka magazine, and that is the workshop, the third principle to deliver my knowledge to the future generations, according to my manifesto. Thank you so much for having me today. Let me just give you my last advice. 3 quotes that it is no coincidence that they are so similar. The future belongs to those who dare to dream. You have to dare to dream. Don't get afraid of your dreams. But Eleanor Roosevelt had a very similar quote that completes the first one. The future also belongs to those who believe in the beauty of their dreams. Don't quit on your dream. If you have the dare to dream, just don't surrender. Do not keep working on your path. And the last one by Malcolm X, the future also belongs to those who prepare for it today. So take an action, take a course, take a knowledge, grab a book. It might be a small step, but at the small steps accumulate, you will find yourself someday on the top of a mountain. Thank you so much for having me today. Thank you, Mariam, for your efforts and for your flexibility in organizing this event. I hope that I have delivered something new, something informative. And those are my links. You are welcome to approach me at any time for any reason, or even for no reason, just to say hi or to ask for advice. You are always welcome. Thank you so much.
Oh my God, thank you, Dr. Sauer, for this great presentation. It was truly out of this world, and you really left us in awe. And we really hope that this very rich and generous presentation has inspired our attendees to look beyond the boundaries of our planet and think about the future of human civilization in space. Unfortunately, we do have a hard stop now, but for those who have any following questions or comments, you can see the contact list for Dr. Samer, and I've also pasted the LinkedIn page on the chat box, so for you to connect and continue this great discussion. So as we conclude this webinar, we encourage everyone to continue exploring this fascinating world of space urbanism and to stay curious about the endless possibilities that this universe has to offer from nature, physics, human anatomy, and even from disasters, and turning them into opportunities as Dr. Samer has presented. Once again, thank you, Dr. Samer, for this great presentation. I am sure I'll be contacting you again for another one, maybe to explore the AI and to explore more of your great ideas. We definitely need more of that. So thank you so much.
Welcome, my dear, anytime.
Thank you so much. Thanks a lot. Once again, thank you for those who joined us, and we hope to see you at our next Urban Design Talk. Thanks a lot. Thank you, Dr. Samer.